The rope bit into my wrists as I hung from the ceiling, cold water pouring over me. Samuel's furious eyes burned with anger. "You really think you can refuse me?" he shouted. Fear tightened in my chest as I struggled to breathe. My wrists ached, but I twisted desperately, praying I could break free. "Hello, my name is Rebecca, and I'm 28 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, with my 5-year-old daughter, Olivia. Sometimes I look back and wonder how my life ended up here, in this terrifying moment. There was a time when everything felt perfect, when I thought I had a beautiful future ahead of me. But that all changed the moment Samuel revealed who he truly was. We met at a friend's party, and from the first moment, Samuel seemed like the perfect man. He was charming, funny, and full of life, and I fell for him quickly. After a year of dating, we got married, and soon after, Olivia was born. I thought we were building a family full of love, but over time, I started to notice little things. Samuel became more controlling, dismissive of my feelings, and increasingly unpredictable. What began as small frustrations soon grew into something far more dangerous. At first, it was little comments that chipped away at me. "Rebecca, can you make sure the house is spotless when I get home?" He'd say, his voice sharp and demanding. I thought he was just stressed from work, but his words carried a weight that settled heavily on my shoulders. Whenever I tried to talk about how I felt, he'd brush me off, saying I was being too sensitive. I started to feel smaller and smaller in my own home. Then there was Samuel's younger sister, Laura. At 22, she was still figuring out her life, but she relied heavily on Samuel, and he indulged her every whim. "She's family," he'd say whenever I voiced my frustration. Laura treated our home like her own personal retreat, dropping by unannounced, demanding attention and care. I felt like an outsider in my own house, constantly catering to their needs while my own were ignored. The breaking point came when Samuel started gambling. At first, I didn't think it was serious, but then I found out he had lost $50,000. I was shocked. He had drained our savings and was now demanding more from me. The money I had saved was meant for Olivia's future, for her education, but Samuel wanted it to pay off his gambling debts. I refused. I couldn't let him destroy our lives any further. That night, Samuel's anger reached a terrifying new level. When I told him no, he snapped. He grabbed a rope, tied my hands, and suspended me from the ceiling. Cold water splashed over me as he shouted, demanding that I give him the money. But I couldn't. No matter how much he tried to break me, I knew I had to protect Olivia. My body was cold, my mind racing, but through the fear, I knew I had to act quickly. I couldn't give up. I started twisting my wrists, ignoring the pain as the rope bit into my skin. I felt the knot begin to loosen, just enough for me to slip one hand free. The moment I was able to free my other hand, I fell to the floor, landing hard. My legs wobbled, but I forced myself to stand. There was no time to think about the pain. I had to find Olivia. I rushed to her room, where she had been hiding. Her wide, tear-filled eyes met mine as I pulled her into my arms. "Mommy, what's happening?" she asked in a trembling voice. "We're leaving, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice shaking but determined. "We're going to be safe." I quickly grabbed a small bag, tossing in a few clothes and Olivia's favorite teddy bear. Every second felt like an eternity. My hands trembled as I stuffed what little I could into the bag. I could hear Samuel in the other room, still fuming, but I knew I had a chance to escape before he realized what I was doing. Quietly, I led Olivia out of the house. The cold night air hit us as we stepped outside, but I didn't stop to look back. My heart raced, adrenaline pumping through me as I fumbled with the keys and got Olivia into the car. We drove away in silence, Olivia clutching her teddy bear tightly in the back seat. My mind was a blur of fear, anger, and relief all at once. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back, not after what had happened. We reached my parents' house after what felt like hours. The familiar warmth of their home wrapped around us as my mother opened the door, concern etched on her face. "Rebecca, what happened?" she asked, pulling me into a tight embrace. I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. "It's Samuel. He's gone too far this time," I choked out, recounting everything that had happened. The gambling, the threats, the violence. My mother held me close, stroking my hair as I cried, while my father paced the room, anger simmering in his eyes. "You and Olivia are staying here," he said firmly. "We'll deal with Samuel. He won't come near you again." The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't let this go on. Samuel had crossed a line, and I needed to take action, not just for me, but for Olivia. I contacted a lawyer to begin the divorce process and to file for full custody of my daughter. But that wasn't enough. I needed to ensure Samuel paid for what he had done. I called the police and reported the abuse, recounting every detail of that terrifying night. The investigation began almost immediately. The police took my statement seriously, and soon they were gathering evidence to build a case against Samuel. My lawyer, Jenna Parker, was sharp and experienced. She reassured me that we had a strong case, and as the days went on, I began to feel a glimmer of hope. But I knew that facing Samuel in court wouldn't be easy. As the weeks passed, the case against Samuel grew. My neighbors, who had overheard the fights and witnessed my bruises, came forward with their testimonies. Jenna hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Samuel's gambling debts, and what they uncovered shocked me even more. Samuel wasn't just gambling. He was in debt to some dangerous people, and his reckless behavior had put our family at risk. Every new piece of evidence felt like a knife in my heart, but it also strengthened my resolve. I was going to fight for my daughter's future. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. My parents came with me for support, and Jenna stood by my side as we entered the courtroom. Samuel sat on the other side, his face cold and expressionless, but I could see the anger simmering just beneath the surface. Beside him sat Laura, who had always defended him, no matter how badly he behaved. Her smirk was infuriating, but I focused on what mattered, getting justice for Olivia and me. Jenna presented our case with precision, laying out the evidence piece by piece. She started with Samuel's gambling addiction, the $50,000 he had lost, and the debts he had racked up. Then came the testimonies from our neighbors, who described the shouting matches and the visible signs of abuse they had seen over the years. The photographs of my injuries were displayed before the court, proof of the violence that Samuel had tried to hide. Samuel's lawyer attempted to downplay the situation, claiming that Samuel had never meant to hurt me and that his gambling was just a temporary problem. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every document, every witness testimony, every photograph painted a damning picture of who Samuel truly was. I could see his confidence wavering as the case against him built. Finally, it was my turn to testify. My hands trembled as I took the stand, but I knew that this was my chance to tell the truth. I recounted everything, from the first time Samuel had dismissed my feelings to the night he had tied me up and poured water over me. I spoke about the fear I felt for myself and Olivia, and how I had to make the decision to leave, knowing that staying would only put us in more danger. "I just want to protect my daughter," I said, my voice strong despite the tears in my eyes. "Samuel is a danger to both of us, and I can't allow him to continue hurting us." The courtroom fell silent as I finished my testimony. I looked over at Samuel, but his expression was unreadable. The judge sat back, her face stern as she considered everything she had heard. The courtroom was tense as the judge sat quietly, reviewing the evidence and testimonies presented. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for her decision, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I held my breath, hoping that all of this, the sleepless nights, the fear, the courage to leave, would finally lead to justice. The judge looked up, her expression serious and thoughtful. After reviewing all the evidence and hearing the testimonies, she began, her voice calm but firm, It is clear that Mr. Samuel Carter has engaged in both physical and emotional abuse against Mrs. Rebecca Carter. The evidence also confirms his reckless gambling habits and the financial harm he has inflicted on his family. This behavior is unacceptable, and I find Mr. Carter guilty of domestic abuse and aggravated assault. My heart skipped a beat as I heard those words. I glanced over at Samuel, whose face was pale and expressionless. I couldn't believe this was finally happening. Given the severity of the actions and the clear danger posed to both Mrs. Carter and their daughter, Olivia, I am sentencing Mr. Carter to 10 years in prison, the judge continued, her gaze stern. Additionally, full custody of Olivia Carter will be awarded to Mrs. Rebecca Carter, and Mr. Carter will have no legal rights to contact his daughter during his imprisonment. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest. The fear, the anxiety, the sleepless nights, all of it began to melt away. Samuel was going to prison, and Olivia and I were free. I glanced at my lawyer, Jenna, who gave me a reassuring smile. "You did it, Rebecca," she whispered. Samuel sat still, his face blank, as the reality of the situation sunk in. Laura, his sister, who had been so smug throughout the trial, looked stunned. But none of that mattered now. Samuel would no longer have power over me or Olivia. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. The sun was shining brightly, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to breathe deeply. My parents were waiting for me outside, and when they saw me, they rushed over, pulling me into a tight embrace. "It's over," I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. "He's gone." My father held me close, his eyes wet with tears. "We're so proud of you, Rebecca. You did what you had to do, and now you and Olivia can move forward." Over the next few weeks, I began the process of rebuilding our lives. Olivia and I stayed with my parents while I found a new place to live. My lawyer helped finalize the divorce, and I started attending a support group for survivors of domestic abuse. There, I met other women who had gone through similar experiences, and their stories gave me strength. We shared our pain, our fears, and eventually, our victories. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, and that there was hope even after the darkest times. One afternoon, after dropping Olivia off at her new preschool, I found a cozy apartment not far from my parents' house. It wasn't big, but it was perfect for us, a place where we could start fresh, free from the memories of the past. Moving into our new home felt like a symbolic step forward. The walls were bare, and the rooms echoed with the possibility of new beginnings. I decorated Olivia's room with her favorite colors, and we filled the shelves with her beloved books and toys. She laughed and played in the open space, her joy infectious. Watching her grow, free from the tension and fear that had once surrounded her, filled my heart with warmth. Each night, as I tucked Olivia into bed, she would ask, "Are we really safe, Mommy?" And every night, I would smile and reply, "Yes, sweetheart. We're safe now." Life slowly returned to normal, but it was a new kind of normal, one where I no longer lived in fear, where my decisions were mine to make. I found work as a graphic designer, a job that allowed me to provide for Olivia while doing something I loved. My parents remained close, always there for support, and I found strength in the routines of everyday life. Months passed, and one day, I received a letter from the district attorney's office. Samuel had attempted to appeal his sentence, but his appeal had been denied. The justice system had stood by the original decision, ensuring that he would remain in prison for the full 10 years. I sat with the letter in my hands, feeling a sense of closure. It was over, truly over. Olivia and I had found peace in our new life. We spent weekends at the park, played games in the evenings, and enjoyed the small moments that had once seemed so far out of reach. I no longer woke up in fear. I no longer worried about what Samuel might do. I was free, and so was my daughter. As time passed, I reflected on how far we had come. The darkness of our past would always be a part of our story, but it no longer defined us. We were moving forward, building a life filled with love, hope, and safety. Olivia blossomed, full of energy and laughter, and I knew that everything I had done, the fight, the tears, the courage to leave, had been worth it. I had reclaimed my life. I was no longer just a victim. I was a survivor, and as I watched Olivia grow, I knew their future was bright.